Adventurers, welcome back to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast. This is your host, Tom, or Robots. I'm here with my good buddy, Lotus of Doom, who is still as high as a kite about the year of Lotus for
and
Elder
not
Scrolls
on
Online.
skooma.
And not on skooma. It is not even skooma. It's just all natural.
Not even skooma induced. It's just all of the things, which I'm quite pleased that we'll be diving into since we're doing a new, I don't know, swath of topic that spans several episodes here, going into the lands and stuff. We're starting with my region of choice even.
Yeah, so this is a wonderful way to transition from one kind of series of things to another. We've been talking about Morrowind and the houses and then the tribunal and all of that stuff. But we're transitioning over to talk about each of the regions and the physical locations, the cities, the flora, the fauna. Those are fun words. All of the other little details that have nothing to do necessarily with the history and politics of the peoples and more to do with the locations themselves. And so why not make the transition right now by continuing to talk about Morrowind and using that as a jumping off point?
Right. Especially since, this is just it. We just found out which region we'll be going to, for the upcoming year for Elder Scrolls Online. And it gives a great jumping off point for all right, we've discussed the politics of Morrowind and all this stuff. Why not find out what it's actually like theoretically in Morrowind?
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about the land masses, kind of the geography, the way everything is shaped, the location of the most important cities that we know of based on the different games and lore and things that have been brought up.
Yeah,
and then
we're getting more throughout the year. So also this is going to be kind of like what we have available, but there's stuff like Necrom and things like this are not super fleshed out yet because they basically have only been touched on in little bits and you've only ever been able to go to it in Elder Scrolls 1 Arena, which, spoiler alert, didn't have a lot to it.
Right. Those are kind of the jumping off points for the more recent adaptations, which have added a lot more to those kinds of locations. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about the other creatures and plants and those kinds of things, and then a little bit about the architecture. So to kick this off, let's talk about the different regions. You have Morrowind, but Morrowind makes up not just an island, the island of Vardenfell, which we've been to a few different times.
Right.
Across different games.
Something I think that might be just worth specifically noting there is a lot of people, because of the game Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind and the expansion in Elder Scrolls Online Morrowind, that island is part of Morrowind. That isn't Morrowind.
Right.
It's Vardenfell. It, to your point, it's a part of the region of Morrowind, and it's something that actually gets named and misconstrued quite a bit, where they're just like, oh yeah, we're just going to go to the island of Morrowind. It's like, well, you're going to an island in Morrowind.
Right. It would be like saying that I'm going to New York and you only ever mean Manhattan. Right. New York is more than just Manhattan.
Correct. So that's just one thing right off the rip that's probably worth mentioning, as I see that actually gets confused quite a bit, that the island itself is called Vardenfell and it's just a part of Morrowind.
Right. And so Vardenfell, as we know, is also the home of the Red Mountain, which is a very active volcano, which explodes a few different times throughout the history of everything. And because of that, there is a lot of very... What's the word for it? The soot and the ash from the volcano is very carbon rich. So
yeah, it's very fertile, very verdant area.
Yeah, so the area is
in between desolation. It's,
right.
It's got some great growing seasons.
Right. It's also a location where you're going to find a lot of the weird plants and animals and things that really define the Morrowind experience.
Yeah, Morrowind is definitely more alien than a lot of the places we will be talking about through this little mini series portion. Honestly, a lot of people's, I guess myself and a lot of the people whose first entry into the series was the Elder Scrolls 3, one of the big factors that seems nostalgia-wise, as well as people when they first see it, it's because it's so weird. Morrowind is really unique in its landscape. And it doesn't have an awful lot of parallels to real, I guess it does have parallels to real life. but they're very exaggerated a lot of the time.
Right, right. And so there's some other phrases and things you should know. For example, Vardenfell is also called the Black Isle because of the soot and everything that falls from the mountain. It's in the Bay of the Inner Sea, which is the area around that area. Like if that island wasn't there, it would just be a gigantic bay, kind of like
right.
Like the Gulf of Mexico. In fact, it'd be like a gulf. That's how big it is.
It
wouldn't even
like
be
almost
anymore.
like entirely like a gulf. Yep.
Yeah. So that takes up all the center point of all of that. And it's the location of many of the cities, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We also have places like Balfoyen, which is the tiny swamp region to the southeast shore of the Inner Sea. It's between Stone Falls and the northeastern peninsula. So as you're getting closer to the Telvanni Peninsula, this is Balfoyen's kind of down there at the south part. Then we have the region of Stone Falls, and this is one of the locations that you can visit in ESO from the very beginning.
Yep.
Stone Falls is situated along the southwestern shore of the Inner Sea and borders Balfoyen, and Deshan, which is south of it. And Deshan is another one of those locations, which is just south of it. All of these locations still have a very kind of Vardenfellish kind of feeling because there's still some of the soot from the mountain. There's still the fauna, and some of the animals and things are similar in these regions. They're just a little bit more continental and a little less like living on the side of a volcano.
Yes, and at the further south you go from going from like you go to Stone Falls and then down to Deshan, as you get more toward Black Marsh, you get a little bit less, to your point, the volcanic type of thing, and a little more, it gets a little more marshy as you go, more mainland into the actual like mainland of Tamriel as a whole. Right.
The trees and things that you would recognize in the more mainland sections. But Stone Falls itself is still pretty active with lava flows and even just these weird cliff faces and places that there's just volcanic activity still. And then we have the Telvanni Peninsula, which is on the east side as you move up. If you take out Vardenfell, the rest of it's basically a smiley. It's like a U.
Or if you look at just the peninsulas area, which will be a piece of where we're going in the next year of Elder Scrolls Online. I used to jokingly refer to it as the Morrowind mitten because it just looks like a little glove off to the side if you just have that area.
Right. So the Telvanni Peninsula is on the eastern side of that. And the section that we're getting for ESO this year is just the southern part of what would be that one arm. Although technically it goes all the way up to the very northern part of that. Peninsula.
It does, and it's kind of peculiar. I don't know if it's storyline related or what, because again, we haven't gotten the chapter yet. It was just revealed earlier. Actually, like a week and a half ago. I was going to say earlier this month, but we're in a new month. But technically, sorry about that. Technically, the Telvanni Peninsula portion is actually like the tip, like the top bit of that. So like we're kind of toward the middle, I for lack of a better way of putting it, the mainland of the peninsulas.
Yeah, kind of the lower half of it. Yeah.
But it's it still, I believe, classifies as a peninsula when you look at it like that.
Yeah, like if you live in the middle part of Florida, but not Miami. Like I don't live in Miami. I still live on a peninsula, but I'm just not at the tip of the peninsula.
Exactly, but it's still a peninsula.
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of more toward the middle section, which is where we'll get into some of the cities and stuff like that. But that's like the middle bit is where we're going to be apparently going for the current year of Elder Scrolls Online.
Right. And then cities like Necrom. We'll talk about all the cities a little bit later.
After.
Now that we'll give you a foundation of where the locations are and what they feel like, and then we'll just put all the cities in them. So you got the Telvanni Peninsula, which is the north part gets more cold than the southern part. The southern part's more temperate. There's some fertile lands. There's some bad lands on the western side. And for the most part, this is where you're going to see some of the really big mushrooms and things like that. And I'm expecting, because the Telvanni are known for their mushroom houses and that kind of style. So that's the Telvanni Peninsula. Then you have Gorn, which is a small island, which is still considered part of Morrowind, even though it's an island. It's not either on the mainland or on the Vardenfell island.
Yeah.
It's a smaller island. And this is interesting because its exact location, this is a place that's referenced, but we don't know exactly where it is on the map.
That's what I was going to say. It's never really overtly shown, which is incredibly weird.
Yeah, if you look at these maps that get drawn up for games like ESO or the extended larger maps that you get from games like Skyrim or even Morrowind itself, I'm sure that had a map that came with it. A lot of these games have had maps for years now.
Yeah, it's weird. You can't really see them because they're not designed for stream functionality. They're designed for my functionality. But the walls surrounding where I look are actually all the maps.
Are all the maps. Yeah. So you get a lot of these little islands that aren't necessarily named on these little maps. But we know that one of them is Gorn. It may be closer to Necrom or not. We don't know for sure. We know it's got some weird animals, including a striped wolf, and that's about it. I mean, there's some
there's
other
very
little
info on Gorn.
Yeah, very little. Then there's Solstheim, which we have been to in the Elder Scrolls Skyrim
a couple times
because that's a whole DLC.
And it was a expansion for the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind as well.
Yeah, so you got it in two different places, but not in ESO yet.
Not in ESO yet. There was some speculation that actually, I think that was one of the places you had suggested, hey, maybe we'll actually touch back on that.
I thought that would be really cool, but I was wrong again. Oh, well. But Solstheim is the largest island to the northwest side of Morrowind. It's off kind of in that sort of part of Skyrim, but not yet really part of the geography.
Yes, which we're really not going to be covering like political situations, but it's also to your point, kind of why its ownership is not just contested, but kind of wishy-washy. Sometimes it's the Nords and sometimes it's the Dunmer, and then, oh, wait, it's the Nords again. Oh, nope, the Dunmer own it. So like,
right.
It's one of those things where it's really kind of like in the middle of kind of like who owns this depends almost on the time period that you're dealing with it. Right.
For most time periods that we deal with, it's a Morrowind location.
It's always like a Morrowind thing, and it's like the Dunmer seem to have the longest or most prevalent claim to it from what I've always been able to understand. So, it makes sense that it's considered part of Morrowind as a whole.
Yeah. So those are the main locations, those are main regions. Let's go through and talk about some of the cities that show up, because these are cities that you may have been to or visited in games, or maybe you've just heard the names, but it's kind of nice to know that these exist, even just by name. So in Vardenfell, we have Aldrune, which is a Redoran city, Balmora, which is the Hlaalu city to the southwest, Castle Ebonheart, which is the seat of imperial authority in Vardenfell. Nissus, that starts with a G, Gnissis.
Nisus is a weird one.
Nissus,
Nissus. I don't know. I always say Nissus, but I have zero idea how you actually would say it. But it's basically spelled Gnissis.
Gnissis, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a fairly large town on the northwestern coast of Vardenfell. You've got Red Mountain itself. Sadrith Mora, which is the Telvanni city on the archipelago off the eastern coast of Vardenfell.
Yep.
Seda Neen, which is a small little
imperial encampment. That's basically where, ironically, that's where you always start your adventure for Vardenfell. The Morrowind expansion for ESO or for Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. That's the dock you land at for your initial check-in is Seda Neen, and it's the same regardless of how far apart they are in years. It's this crappy little swamp village. It's very nostalgic.
It really is interesting. I remember playing Morrowind in ESO for the first time and getting off the boat and being like, oh my God. Like they totally did it on purpose. Like, because everybody remembers leaving the boat.
They're like, no, we're not, a couple hundred years past doesn't matter.
Nope, that building's in the same spot. That building's in the same spot. The dock is basically the same.
Years, and it's like, really, you haven't done much remodeling in all these years.
Yep. And then there's the city of Vivec, which, surprise, Vivec named a city after himself.
Yeah, who would have thought?
Who would have thought he would have done that?
Such a humble person, too.
But that's on the southwestern. It's all the way south, but a little bit western.
It's very interesting too, because it's got a little bit of landmass to it, but a lot of the city is just these floating cantons out in the water.
Yeah,
which you get to see their construction. during the Elder Scrolls Online, and it's these cantons are literally these like floating chunks of the city, and they all
almost like these little
other.
pyramid type shapes almost.
Yeah, and it's cool because you can go in and out of them, and they've got tiers of them. For anybody who's actually, honestly, like you said, it's like these little pyramids, and they're divided into like tiers and stuff like that. It's a very unique design to a city. I always thought it was very, very cool exploring around there. Confusing as hell if you don't know where you're going because they all look very similar,
right?
And they intertwined with each other. But it gives it a really cool aesthetic.
Yeah, each one has shops, but they're on different levels, and then the center area is kind of hollowed out and is kind of a gathering space for a lot of the people. Right. I would imagine if this was built to scale for the way the city would actually have to be if it was housing thousands of people rather than like dozens of people, that these things would have been enormous and would have had levels that were like apartments and homes. Right. And then on the bottom, like 2 floors would have been shops and all of that stuff. But we don't get that much built up because of just the scale of that would be kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, it'd take you 50 minutes to get across each canton. And it's like, okay, well, there's a pile of these. This is a mess. Right.
Now let's move to the mainland. We're going over to the Mitten, as Lotus calls it. We have the city of Almalexia, which we talked about. Surprise, there's a city named after
it's weird
her.
That almost that these are named after people who really just very grounded in reality.
They're not big on themselves at all.
No.
So this is the major Indoril city on the southern part of Morrowind, surrounding Mournhold. And then we have Blacklight, which we talked about before, which is Redoran district, and it's over on the east side of the Mitten, kind of the top of the left Mitten.
A shocking misdirection with our secret letters, where I was like, "There's no way that could possibly be a coincidence. That would be the most on the nose coincidence ever." And apparently, it was the most on the nose coincidence ever.
I bet everybody at Sauce was just like, oh my God, come on, guys.
No. I'm sure when I brought that up, they were like, some asshole had to come up with the blacklight analogy.
Freaking Lotus.
Like, why did you bring that up? It's like, we just thought it was a cool trick. And I'm like, they clearly meant for this. I'm like, oh my God, these people overthink everything.
Right. So there's Blacklight, which we talked about, which we haven't really been to, but it would be cool to go there. Technically the Clockwork City, because it was created by Sotha Sil and exists and physically sort of, and yet not at the same time.
Right. It's this weird different plane, but the way to get to the plane of its existence is actually like the clockwork globe, for lack of a better way of putting it, is in Morrowind. So it's kind of there, kind of not. Created by a Dunmer very easily. Like you put it on a boat, suddenly it's in Black Marsh.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Weird. So we've got the Clockwork City, which we've talked about. Devon's Watch, which is an Indoril city in Ebonheart. East of Ebonheart. And then Firewatch, which is a city in the northern Telvanni district on the northeastern side of Morrowind. Kraganmore, or Kraganmore, pronunciation, who knows?
I always said Kraganmore, but I'm not sure I've ever heard anybody say it in game, or I wasn't paying attention if they did. I always just said Kraganmore.
Yeah, this one's in western Morrowind, and it was originally controlled by House Dress, and then later by the Hlaalu. Because of all the things we talked about with the different houses.
Yeah.
And then we have Mournhold, which is very well known. It's one of those cities you should recognize.
Yeah, big capital city for a long, long time, all the way up to the 4th era, year 5.
Right. And mainly focuses on the House Indoril as being the holders of that city. And then there's Narcissus, which is a Hlaalu city on the southwestern side of Morrowind. Necrom, which we're going to get to go visit in this new ESO expansion. Very
exciting.
Yeah, this was a dress city, and it is on the eastern coast. It's kind of in the middle of that Telvanni Peninsula. And it's a city for where they bring their dead and they celebrate the lives of the people they're interring there.
It is, and it's kind of so that this will be very interesting to see as more is given to us, because the UASP makes mention of it being a dress city, and it's in pretty strongly surrounded by Indral territory, a lot of that area. Again, things shift based on time period, but they actually made reference to the fact that the Telvanni were kind of farther down during this time period, which doesn't have a lot of information on it yet. So potentially the politics of that situation are going to unfold in the current year, because they did also make reference to the fact that it was a strongly neutral ground during Elder Scrolls Online, which makes sense if everybody is universally going there to kind of like try to pay respects and bury their dead and stuff like that.
Right.
Probably best to not have like, a bickering war state right there.
Right.
But it'll be interesting to see how that fleshes out as we get to see more of Necrom, because it's been so vague with just references to it at the moment.
Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to it, because it's that whole like it's got like a Day of the Dead kind of thing, celebrating
very much so,
the dead. Yep. It's kind of spooky, but at the same time respectful of the previous generations and people's ancestors. It's got a lot of that feel to it, which I think is totally cool. So I'm looking forward to exploring the city. Then we have Ebonheart, which is a dress city located south of Vardenfell on the southern coast. I was going to say southeastern, but just southern coast of the Inner Sea. And then Tyr, which is a dress city on the southeastern coast of Morrowind. And those are the main locations. So if you hear any of those names, think Morrowind, think these specific groups. Now, before we get to the mid-break, I wanted to just go over real quickly the different types of architecture that you can see in each of these locations. So you noticed we mentioned during the listing of these cities if they were a Redoran city or Hlaalu city or Telvanni city. And you can tell by just the way the architecture looks. So if we start with the Redoran style, it is organic buildings shaped like, and sometimes made from, crustaceans and mollusks. They've got this very like ocean kind of creature vibe thing going.
Yeah, it definitely has kind of like a almost like the way hermit crabs go from like one shell that they live in to a bigger shell that they live in.
Yeah.
It's almost like that in structure form.
Right. Right. So if you see that,
which is weird.
Yeah. If you see that, think Redoran. Hlaalu style is simple stuccoed stone, multi-level designs, often involving stairways and ramps. It's kind of squarish with rounded edges and often buttressed. That's a good word, buttressed. So if you see kind of a more plain style stuccoed buildings, that's Hlaalu.
Yeah, a lot of their stuff I actually find very funny. It's like if you look at like Arizona buildings.
Yeah, yeah. Like mesas and that kind of Midwestern.
Yeah, that's
Native American inspired
styling. Yeah, very similar styling to how Hlaalu structures are.
Right.
If anything, maybe just a slight bit more elaborate type of deal, but it's like that type of setup.
Yeah, that's a good reference. Then the Telvanni, they're the ones with the weird mushroom towers and twisting, like everything's kind of built out of. Yeah, it's like they build it out of nature, and then I don't know if I'm sure. I would assume there's some magic that makes the mushrooms get even bigger.
Well, yeah, from what's seen and discussed in games and stuff like that, a lot of times it seems like they basically use their magic to cultivate the fungi into these enormous things and then use that to like, okay, well, this is now my structure. Like,
right. I just grew myself a new home.
Exactly. We'll see a similar situation when we get to Valenwood and the Bosmer and stuff like that. But this seems a little less. I always got the impression this was a little less natural and symbiotic and a little more of the Telvanni making nature do what they want.
Yeah.
So, whereas I never got that impression with the Bosmer, obviously, who live much more symbiotically with nature. This struck me always as like a little bit more of like, no, I can dominate this and make it do what I want. It's like, now I got this sweet mushroom tower, like,
right.
And it's very unique. It's a lot of the aesthetic that when people talk about the region, this is the one that jumps out to people the most because it's so bizarre.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's what most people will notice. So when you don't see that and you see one of these other styles, then take notice. Be like, oh, that's Redoran or that's Hlaalu. Right. There's also the Velothi style, which pulls a lot from Hlaalu style. So similar kind of simplistic design and that kind of thing. You see it in a lot of ancient temples or towers, those kinds of places. So that's primarily, those are the main styles that you're going to see across. You're going to see a little bit of influence from Imperials, or maybe a little bit of influence from the Argonians, being that these are neighboring groups. But for the most part, when we're talking Morrowind styles in these locations, then yes, that's basically what you get. So, all right. Well, we've got to go take a quick break and thank our patrons for making this show possible. But don't go anywhere, because we're going to talk more about the fauna and the flora of the different kinds of creatures and weird plants and stuff that you're going to find in Morrowind. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
This is Miss Mora, Dragonborn, and you are educating yourself to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast.
All right, here we are in the middle of the show where we get to thank our patrons, and we've got a bunch of new patrons to shout out. So if you are one of these people, then hello, welcome. We've got Dean C, Joey G, Reavercore, OC Devil, or Devil, something like that. I'm gonna mess up all the names anyway. Jesse M, Jeremy L, and that's it for this month. But that's it for this month. Thank you to all of you guys for signing up and joining us. I hope you guys are enjoying your ad-free episodes or any of the other bonuses and benefits that you get from supporting us on Patreon. If you're interested in checking out the Patreon, it's patreon.com/Elder Scrolls Lorecast. So you can check out all the different tiers, all the different stuff that you can get. And we also have to shout out our Daedric Princes, Kira C and Noodle Al Dente. They get shout outs every week for being tier 5 patrons, which is amazing. And we're currently up to 125 patrons. So you guys are the best. Thank you so much. Also, we would be reading out a new review, but we don't have a new one this week. We read out some last week with our patrons. But if you'd like to help us out by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, we will read it out on a future episode of the show. Or you can just drop us a rating on Spotify or whatever platform you're listening on, or just tell your friends or your family or your grandma. Maybe you can get your grandma into playing Skyrim, because there's already one of those on the internet. We could have We could have a few more. I mean, I got my mom. So my mom is technically a grandma. I got her to play with me. So
see, so that's 2.
There you go. Let's get that. Let's keep increasing the number of grandmas playing Elder Scrolls. That's our plan from this point forward. All right, let's get back to the rest of the show.
You're listening to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, dear child of cities. That is why the Night Mother loves you.
Lotus, I feel like this whole flora and fauna section of this style of episode is kind of like doing the artifacts for the Daedric Princes.
There's some
like the nitty-gritty details, the fun little things that you'll notice.
Yeah,
there's that kind of stuff.
Interesting stuff in the area.
Yeah. So let's talk about flora. Obviously, there's gigantic mushrooms. Some of them grow naturally big. Like we talked about before, the Telvanni also like to make them big into homes and stuff like that.
Yep.
And other types of fungi, which includes bloat spores, bunglers, bane.
Yep.
Which is a great name.
There's some great names for some of this stuff.
Yeah. Hyphophagia, which sounds like a Latin genus and species or something. Luminous russula, violet corprinus. These all sound very fancy.
Yeah. Violet coprinus, I guess. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then there's other ones too, like black lichen.
Yeah, your black lichen, the fire ferns.
Fire
Personally,
ferns?
I love chokeweed. It's just
chokeweed.
That
sounds like an insult.
Yeah,
like you chokeweed.
Yeah.
What are you doing, you chokeweed?
It just sounds like such an aggressive thing that I wouldn't want in my front lawn.
Yeah. So these are found in like the rocky, infertile areas.
This is a little more at the base of the volcano at Red Mountain, and you see a lot of this stuff, and it's just like kind of springing up out of the destruction. Yeah.
So yes, so you have these like really hardy types of plants that are growing in these very rocky, kind of desolate locations, but then you end up with a variety of other plants, and we're not going to go through the names of everything. There's a bunch here that we could be naming out, but
sure,
you end up with the other kinds of plants. But for the most part, when you're in locations like Vardenfell, there's not regular trees. it's not like you get in the shade of a tree most of the time. You're in the shade of the fungus.
Yes.
The big
the other
fungal growths.
Yeah. And the other one that I feel like we would be kind of, like you said, we don't need to name literally everything, but Creshweed is, in the same area as the main thing, which is a largely traded item, part of the flora. There is Saltrice or salt rice.
Salt rice. I call it salt rice. You call it Saltrice? And by the way,
call it Saltrice. I always thought it had.
Before everyone adds me, it's not like there aren't trees in Vardenfell. It's just they're not as common. Like
yeah.
You would more generally find yourself underneath them.
If you go to Deshaun, there are plenty of trees.
There are plenty of trees.
It's more. The thing is, it's based on the area. You have more fungi, or you have more just like tree life.
You can be in a zone where you don't see any trees and there just happens to be lots of fungi. Correct. But then you can go further in a direction, eventually come across trees. So don't at me about that. I know there are still trees in those places.
I'm going to do it.
Somebody's going to be like, Tom doesn't know there's trees in Morrowind.
But yeah, I always called it Saltrice, but it's just salt rice because it grows in salt water. But I always, when I first started these games and there was very, very little dialogue, I was like, what's Saltrice?
Because you read it. And then you don't hear it.
I tried to turn it into a thing and I was like, oh, maybe it's just salt rice. But either way, that's a big import-export thing, which is in all of the games. It's very common, and it's kind of like something that I would assume a lot of farmers. I guess you would farm this.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like something.
And it's like a cranberry.
Well, they make alcoholic beverages called mazd.
Yes, I was going to say it's also very useful for brewing. Exactly.
Right. And you also have other things like scrib cabbage and wickwheat and these other muck sponge plants, which make muck. Like it's a thing.
Delicious.
Muck. They eat the roots of the trauma shrubs. There's berries in the cornberry plant. These are all the kinds of agriculture that you find across Morrowind. And they're weird. Ash yams
I was about to say ash yams are very, that's like a super staple of a lot of people in the Ashlands. Spoiler alert.
Yeah. They're like volcano potatoes.
Yeah, volcano potatoes, exactly.
That's the name of my next dog.
I love it.
I'm going to name a dog
really
Volcano Potato.
Canon.
Oh my God, that's amazing. But there's lots of other stuff too. So a variety of different weird
those are just like
things.
Very, very common. And then there's, lots of other stuff. But those are kind of like, the most common, I would say.
Right. And now, along with the weird plants, you got weird animals. So let's talk about the fauna.
Yeah, you get some weird animals. Some really weird ones.
I guess we have to start with the guar.
Yes, everybody's favorite creature, except Arcanir.
But this is where the guar
small cult following at this point.
The guar are from here.
Yes.
This is where they're from.
Yes. They're little dinosaur chickeny type things.
Dinosaur chickens, yep.
Yep.
With big mouths. Like really, they're mostly like Pac-Man. It's like a Pac-Man dinosaur with legs and a tail.
Lizard,
yes.
Yeah. If Pac-Man was a salamander, that is a guar. But they're really commonly used as beasts of burden. Like they help out on farms. They carry people around. They're very what's the word I'm looking for? Not docile. I mean, they are for the most part, but
dynamic,
domesticated.
Domesticated, yes.
There's the word.
Yes, until they all decide to rebel and eat us all.
Yeah, and then take over the world at some point. But that's much later down the line.
Right. Then we also get we get some other weird things that are bug-like creatures, like the Siltstriders are gigantic.
Siltstriders are very weird, and they're basically like giant mosquito things, but they have like this enormous carapace.
Yeah.
So they hollow out the top of it and use it as a form of travel.
Right. It's weird. Like super weird.
I mean, they are enormous.
Maybe they're like horses with their hooves. Like the hooves are kind of like toenails and they don't mind in fact, you should be trimming your horse's toenails. But
it's hard to tell because you don't really see them move too much. They're always hovering. So like,
they're just sitting at one of those docks.
Or do they like clink?
No, I think they walk.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I
walk.
think that it would make sense with the strides, like for a strider.
Yeah, they've got the big legs that like sit down in the water,
spindly little,
and walk
exactly.
around, right?
But they've if you ever see them in game, they're known for their very unique sound. It's just like a very low moo thing.
Yeah. A lot of these creatures are somewhere between like insect and crustacean.
Yes.
They're
very
in
common
that
theme in the area.
Yeah, so you've got like the dreg, dreg, however you pronounce that.
I always say dreg. I actually thought
dreg.
it said somewhere in game dreg.
Yeah, I'm sure I've heard it in game a few times, then always forget how to pronounce it.
I think it's supposed to be dreg.
Yeah, so the dreg, the quama, which again, kind of bug-like, kind of crustacean-like. And then there's the netch, which is like a floating tentacle ball mushroom. Mushroom
they're kind
ball
of
creature.
Jellyfish-like
Jellyfish,
too.
yes. They're like air jellyfish.
Yeah, yes. Okay, so it's sort of like an air jellyfish, but
this is great to be doing this on a platform that is visual because we don't have any visuals for this.
I know,
Most
so
people don't watch the videos.
These.
Most people, like 100 times more people, will listen to this than ever watch the video. So we have to explain
absolutely.
it. Yeah.
So yeah, don't rate the show based on our ability to describe what you should be looking at.
Here's an easy one. Mud crabs.
Yes,
they look like crabs.
They look like crabs.
Slaughterfish also look like fish with really pointy mouths and lots of teeth.
Sometimes
Pretty
they're
easy.
a little fatter, sometimes they're a little longer, but they're always nasty little creatures.
Right. And then we've got some other things like the shalk, like bugs. They're like, again, more like a bug thing.
It's literally almost like it's a type of beetle. It's kind of scarab-like. They're pretty decent in size as well.
Right. And then you've got weird, like, let's go back to the whole like reptilian side, things that seem like they might be related to Gwar. You've got the Alit.
Yep.
Which are like angry Gwar.
Yeah, I was going to say those are the angry Gwar.
Those are the angry without tails.
It's just like a more savage version of what a Gwar kind of is.
Yeah, like little baby tails, but really big mean face.
Yeah.
And then the Kagudi, which is kind of like a Gwar, but also so if you were to take a Triceratops, and take the horn off of its nose and add tusks to it. You've seen those Triceratops style dinosaurs with like the big plate on the head.
Yes, that I was going to say, and it's also known for that like plate piece. The tusks on it come out underneath like it's a like an elephant, and the plate is like a Triceratops on the top. That's not where the tusks or the horns are. So
right, and then you've got weird creatures that it just gets weirder. Nix hounds, which are again very bug like.
They're very bug like. They're honestly they're like a stressed out ant.
They're just stressed. Okay, the stressed out ants.
It's like a stressed out ant.
Yep. And then, so let's get to the other. There's rats and other things like that. Let's talk. We're talking more like the weird animals.
But those are not necessarily just here.
Right. But then we have other creatures that are like the main races of Tamriel don't necessarily consider these people, but they're kind of people-like. They're kind of, arms, legs, head, body, winged twilight, which look like these like flying bat people kind of creatures.
It's weird because it's just like, it is a Daedra.
It's a Daedra, but yet some of them live like at least on the island of Vardenfell. Yeah, they inhabit certain sections of this, and it's not in Oblivion. They weren't necessarily summoned here, as far as we know. Right. They just kind of live here. And then you end up with goblins, which live underground. They like to inhabit some of the caves. Sure, and
it's not unique to just Morrowind. They're in different regions, but goblins are definitely in the area as well.
Yep. And so they have things like Durzogs, which are the like dinosaur dog-looking lizard things.
Yep.
And then there's some other just kind of more normal animals. You'll find like rats and more normal looking types of fish and birds.
There are a few more bizarre things though. Like one would be remiss if we did not bring up cliff racers.
Oh yeah. Yes.
I was going to say this one is like if you've ever typed Morrowind into a
Cliff Strider.
Yes, exactly. So there's ones that are not quite so airborne as the cliff racers, which are much more prone to being like airborne. They're sort of, I don't know, it's like a stretchy pterodactyl type thing. Um, but yeah, if you ever look up the like if you ever look at like a GIF search and just type Morrowind, you will often find a GIF that just says "Welcome to Morrowind," and there's this Dunmer just fleeing down a field, and it's just a swarm of these things. They're notoriously overpopulating the area, which is funny because if you play the original Elder Scrolls 3, just anywhere you went, it's just like and there's just like hundreds of these things all the time. They're miserable to fight and they overwhelm you so quickly.
Yeah. So we're talking like dinosaur, like lizard creatures with wings, kind of.
Yes. Yeah. It's sticking with like the weird crossovers and stuff.
Right.
What do you call it? You know, there's lots of other stuff. You know, Vardvarks, which just have a funny name.
Vardvarks. Yeah.
Which is
they're like aardvarks,
but only on Vardenfell.
But they only have 2 legs. Also,
yeah, that's true.
Which is weird.
They only have 2 legs. They kind of have those little front nubs.
Yeah,
and then
they have little scales and funny little. Yeah. They've got like aardvark faces and then like weird little chicken 2-leg bodies.
Yeah. What do you call it? The other thing that did we mention specifically the Quama? Because those are.
I don't think so. I don't think.
Okay, so these are pretty integral.
There's so many weird ones.
I know, and I'm trying to kind of like tag the big ones that matter. Yeah. So Quama are there's several variants of them. There's little foragers, there's workers, there's warriors, there's a queen. When they're little teeny tiny babies, they're scribs.
Oh yeah. I mentioned this when I was talking about the things that look like bugs or crustaceans.
Yeah. So this is the thing that I think is kind of worth mentioning is these things are harvested for a lot of stuff. They're almost like farmed for, you know, it's like not just for food as they are used for food in many cases, but like the wax of them and stuff like that is used to temper weapons and armor and stuff like that. So these things are almost like, even though again, they're kind of crustacean-y, like you said, and bug-like as well, it's almost like our version of a cow or a chicken. Right. Where it's like you get a lot of use out of one of these creatures, be they helping you or you eating it or you using it or something like that.
Right. Also, Rob the Princess is here in chat. Hey, Rob. Rob says, what about Reeklings? Yeah, so as far as I know, Reeklings are only on the islands of Solstheim.
Yes, I
don't think they exist outside of it. I haven't seen anything that I can recall. I'm pretty sure.
I want to say that they actually might be in Hrothgar as well.
Okay, we'll look that up.
I'm not 100% sure on that one.
Yeah.
But
so Reeklings, they're kind of like
most
goblins.
Commonly on Solstheim at bare minimum.
Yeah, they're kind of like little goblin creatures that live in snowy caves, and they've got a little culture. And they you enter their cave and they get mad at you and attack you with their little weapons, and then you slaughter them all as
you just take them out because you're a monster.
Because you're the Dragonborn and you don't care.
And
you got better
do
things
whatever
to do.
you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's it.
Yeah, that's really just you do whatever you want all the time, and you're exempt from being yelled at.
Yeah. Okay, so Rob says they are in Hrothgar in ESO, but you weren't sure if they were anywhere else. Okay, well there you go. You corrected me.
I didn't
remember them being in Hrothgar.
Appreciate the confirmation. I thought you encountered some in like caves type of thing, but it's also a very similar snowy region, so that kind of why. So
yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense. So that's basically, I mean, those are the most exciting and hard to describe things that we could find.
Yeah, no, I really hope everybody enjoyed our audio visual journey there.
Smorgasbord.
Tried to explain all of that.
Oh man! All right, so that's going to do it, I think, for our Morrowind explanation of the land and the city locations and all of that stuff. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. It's a little bit different than we normally do. It probably could use some visuals, but hey, it's an audio podcast, so what are we going to do?
Well, also, this is definitely the most peculiar of the regions, I would say. I mean, there's definitely going to be some other ones region-wise that are going to get weird elsewhere and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But this one is almost more weird when it's not being weird.
We just dove into the deep side of the pool.
Yeah, we started real extreme.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So hope you guys are excited about the next year of ESO content, because we're going to be probably seeing some more things in this region that maybe we haven't seen before.
I know. I'm very curious to have them fill out more of the map because I love them exploring areas that we have not seen before. That's one of my favorite things about Elder Scrolls Online.
Yeah. So looking forward to that. But thanks for joining us, everybody. Lotus, you got anything else to share before we head out?
Not really. I was going to say just the normal other podcast I do with Tales of Tamriel. Other than that, I have just been continuing my tragic playthrough of Daggerfall, which the game is super fun, but oh man, trying to figure out some of that early 90s gameplay can be rough. But hey, it's super fun, and people have told me they really enjoy watching me fumble through those. So yeah, if you have interest in some of the classic games, I intend to go through them all in the end. And that's just on my personal channels, which is just Lotus of Doom, whether it's on Twitch if you want to watch me do it live, or if you prefer a recorded version, it's just Lotus Doom on YouTube as well.
Awesome. I've got a new little project I've been working on.
Ooh, what have you been up to?
This is not Elder Scrolls. I mean, it's Elder Scrolls adjacent. Okay, sort of. All right, so I used to tour in bands and do all that kind of stuff. I've been writing my own and producing my own music again, doing all of it. So not just guitars and bass, but drums and vocals and keyboards and all sorts of stuff. And I've put some stuff out there. And I think what I'm going to do with this is invent a fake internet band. And it's going to be called, and I might change my mind next week, who knows? But it's currently going to be called The New Star Gods. That's a good name. It's like the old star, like Eldritch gods, right?
Yeah.
But the new star gods. So
I feel like that's like a power ballad in the making.
It's so the inspiration for the music is it's kind of shoegaze adjacent, like informed by 90s alternative without being as dumb as so much of. There's a lot of, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of good 90s alternative. There's a lot of bad 90s alternative too. I'm trying to stay away from the bad stuff.
There is a handful of both.
Yep. So I'm
just
trying
like
to
the 90s.
I'm trying to it's very shoegaze adjacent, but with more able to be understood lyrics, I think is probably the best way to say it. Because you know how, like, if you've ever listened to
what a great description for the lyrics, though.
Yeah, of any of like the major shoegaze, like My Bloody Valentine or any of it, it's like the guitars are just, and then on top of that in the background you hear,
all right.
And like that's it. Like you're like, what did they just say? I don't know. But that's what I'm doing. I've got the first two songs. One of them is just by Robots originally, but you can see them up on the Robots Radio YouTube channel. There's hopefully this is a thing. I don't know. Hopefully you guys like it. I think I'm gonna actually some of the stuff is up on like Bandcamp, and I'm gonna put these up on Spotify eventually. I'm trying to get all the marketing and all that stuff figured out as well.
Yeah.
But I want to see if I can make a band that like it's all me, but people think it's probably more. I mean, hopefully, maybe it's more than me at some point. I just need to find people who are nearby who can like come over and
can actually record something.
Like, yeah, or at least like I could do all the recording for the recording stuff and write it, but to like be able to like find some people to go play a show with would be cool again.
Right.
Because it's been like 15 years since I
was going to say, how long has it been since you've done anything like that?
It's been a long time. It's been a long time. But I mean, I was playing shows in front of like 1,000 people on like major stages, like touring and doing all of that. So we'll see. If you guys are interested in that, let me know. Jump on the Discord. There's a music section in the Discord. I'll share a bunch of stuff in there as well.
No, that sounds like a fun little project.
I would love some help getting this off the ground. If anybody's into the music and legitimately likes it. If you don't like it, that's cool. I mean, music is subjective, right?
Yes, I was going to say, that's why I have a tough time with music critics and food critics. Because I'm like, you're just giving a rating to something you like or don't. There's really no objective criteria unless you can't play the instrument. That's really...
Right. Or like you just think it's overly simple. But even that could be appealing to some people.
But I was going to say, as much as I love complicated stuff, I sometimes just like the droning... simplicity of other things. Neither one is bad. They're just different.
Yeah. I'm trying to do like simplicity in the vocal melodies and in the fundamental song structure with a complexity of interlaid instruments and other parts on top of it. So there's
hear some of this.
there's simplicity and complexity at the same time. Like, so the song I just put up starts with 5 different guitar parts that stack on top of each other over time, and then the song like kicks in.
Okay.
And like, yeah, that would be hell to play on stage, but I could do that on a computer, right?
Sure.
So anyway, if you want to check that stuff out, go to our Robots Radio Discord. But that's what I got going on. And of course, everything else at robotsradio.net and the starfieldinsider.com website where we're putting all the news and stuff. Who knows when they're going to launch that game, but any day.
Yeah, the end of the year.
Any day now, hopefully we'll find out more information.
Yep, I assume right around a year delay from their original announce date will probably be about when we get it.
That's what you're thinking. I'm still hoping.
Trying to think of...
Still hoping for the first 6 months of the year sometime.
So this is like a weird tangent to end the show on that is Bethesda adjacent, but not like Elder Scrolls. So like they love their like weird dates, like 11/11/11 and 11/11/22 was supposed to be that. Right. But obviously that didn't happen. I feel like, so I just recently found out, like, I guess like the last like toward the end of this year, the date will technically be 123-123.
Yes. Yeah.
What if they just delay it to 123-123?
Right. Well, that's the last day of the year. That's like the 31st day of the 12th month.
Yeah, I was going to say it's like the last
23rd.
day, right? Because it'd be the 31.
Right.
Yeah, 12/31.
I don't know of any other major AAA game that ever launched on the very last day of the year. I know games have done it, but
what better than Starfield to nail the Todd Howard 123-123?
Dude, that means we gotta wait 11 more months. Oh God, I don't want to wait that long. I need a new game.
No one would ever forget the launch date. It'd just be like Skyrim all over again.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. Well, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. You guys, if we all just hope hard enough, that doesn't do anything. All right. Well, we'll just see what fate delivers us, and we'll just go from there. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. Chat, thank you for being here. You guys are awesome, and patrons, thank you for being here as well. Until next time, stay safe out in Vardenfell or Morrowind or wherever you are, because there's all sorts of weird creatures out there. So, stay safe out there. We'll see you guys next time. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'd love to hear from you. You can reach me on Twitter at robots_radio or Lotus of Doom at Lotus of Doom. Also, you can join us on the Robots Radio Discord channel. You can easily just search Robots Radio Discord on Google or check the description underneath the podcast. Also, this podcast is recorded live every week on Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on the Robots Radio channels on Twitch, YouTube, and on Facebook. So just search Robots Radio on any of those platforms. Come join us. We'd love to chat with you while we record the show, or before or after. Either way, just come hang out with us. And if you're looking for more information about my shows and the shows on the Robots Radio Network, go to robotsradio.net for all the information about all the shows on the network, including the Robots Radio Rocket Club, where I help both new and existing podcasters to grow their shows, build their audiences, and create the best podcasts they possibly can. All of that at robotsradio.net. We'll see you next time.